Hey everybody, this is Mason Plumlee. We're back with another interview. Today we have the founder and CEO of ClassCalc on, Dan Haiem, who is set out to displace all hardware for graphing calculators. So let's bring Dan on and introduce his company.
Hey Mason, sorry, go ahead.
No worries. Thanks for coming on. Where are you joining us from today?
I'm here in sunny LA.
Nice. So really excited to dive in this, learn more about ClassCalc. Why don't we show up just for our viewers a quick video so they can get a better understanding of what you've been working on?
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it.
Great.
So ClassCalc is a lockdown calculator app that's safe for tests.
We have a view of the teacher's web app. The teacher selects the class from the list of virtual classrooms.
It's doing the double play thing again.
Yeah, no worries. Let's see if we can go full screen with it and just let it roll.
We have a view of the teacher's web app. The teacher selects the class from the list of virtual classrooms and starts test mode. Once test mode is confirmed, all of the teacher's students on the right will receive an invite to join test mode. Once the students have joined, they'll be locked into the confines of ClassCalc, completely blocking outside notifications, calls, distractions, and applications. The students are only able to use the ClassCalc scientific, matrix, and graphing calculators. As the students are using their own devices, they are able to exit test mode at any time by clicking Exit Test on the top left-hand corner. The student is warned that their teacher will be notified if they confirm their exit. Once confirmed, the teacher is immediately notified and a red dot appears next to the student's name. Thank you for watching this ClassCalc demo.
Well, that's great. So Dan, where did this idea come from?
It came from really two separate experiences I was having that were happening in parallel and eventually converged. On the one end, when I was in 9th grade, it was 2007. That was the year the iPhone came out. And so our teacher goes to us and says, all right, welcome to high school math. Go buy your graphing calculators and make sure to have them tomorrow. And we all came back the next day having seen this $120 price tag for the first time in our life. And we're just like, why can't we just use our phones? Like, it has a calculator on it, And obviously what the teacher says, and what had been echoed for the next 10 years of every high schooler's life, was you're not going to be able to use your phone like in class because it's distracting, but you're definitely not going to be able to use it on tests because you might cheat, right? So that's where the idea came from. And then, in parallel to that, when I was at UCLA, I started a nonprofit for basically it was science fair, interactive science fair outreach for local low-income schools. And so we did a lot of work with them, and I was just appalled to see like how much something like $120 calculator could break the bank for a family. Like, they'll have to get together and talk like, all right, where are we going to scrap money from to make this thing happen? And so, eventually I had this, I guess my Eureka moment was realizing that, well, hey, if you built an app that was safe for tests, that let teachers like temporarily lock students on the app during tests, it would blow open the doors to using a software that's literally a tenth of the price and going to be way better because it's on a way better platform.
Gotcha. So I understand that you're a physics teacher. Are you still, or are you doing ClassCalc full-time?
ClassCalc full-time, but I did have a lot of fun doing physics for a bit.
Okay, very cool. So take us through, we saw the intro video, but just fundamentally, what's the process for the student and what's the process for the teacher? Take us through an in-class presentation and then also like a test-taking application.
With the share screen or just like verbally?
No, just verbally.
Yeah, for sure. I'll try to paint a picture. So the idea again is, you want a calculator app either on your phone or Chromebook that you could just use in class, at home, and during tests, right? So the calculator app itself is totally free. Anyone can access it. If you go right now to classcalc.com/graphing, nothing will get in your way, and you have this beautiful, powerful calculator available to use at any time. And so students, and the way we're thinking about calculators is we've took a taken a little pivot from what was being done by the handhelds, where instead of just making it more and more powerful to the point where teachers are like, I don't like it, it's doing the work for my students now, we're making it more exploratory. Like we're building a tool that lets students and teachers explore math together. And so when testing time comes, and for some teachers, even during class time, the way the whole test mode lockdown works is, teachers sign in as teachers to the app, students sign in as students, right? Teachers create a virtual classroom. It's a one-time thing. You create a virtual classroom and you add your students. And from now on, when I walk into class, I could just select that virtual class, start test mode. All my students will receive an invite to join lockdown. And we really believe in the students having control of their phone. So the teacher can't lock the student down. They just invite them to join test mode. And when the student joins, that information is communicated back to the teacher panel.
Gotcha. And then I'm assuming iOS, Android, all that works.
Yeah, we got support on iOS, Android, and Chromebooks.
And then one thing that I learned that was interesting, it's not just the software that's shut down for the student, but also like the hardware buttons. So the power button doesn't work, like nothing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not worth it if there's a loophole, right? Like if they can like turn it off and then look at their lock screen and see text coming in or stuff like that. We really believe in creating just an absolutely secure environment for just during the tests or during class as well. So it'll stop the power button as well, and any of the slide menu bars, any of that.
Gotcha. So some students and teachers are using this currently. What grades and ages is this being adopted by as of now?
So we're seeing a lot of middle school, more of high school, and then most of community college and four-year colleges. So we're seeing adoption across the spectrum. And I mean, that was kind of what we had initially set out to do, because at least for me, one thing I was doing is we had to buy like 3 calculators in my day. One special one for your stats class, one special one for your algebra class, and one special one for your chemistry class. And so we set out to build something that just kind of works across the spectrum from 6th grade through higher ed.
Gotcha. So it sounds like the biggest problem that you guys are solving is just price point and being able to afford similar solution through software. What allows you guys to make money then? Are the students paying for it? Are the teachers paying for it? And what's the reception been from both sides?
Yeah, so first, just to address the point you made, I wouldn't say that the price point is the only one. I mean, that is definitely a huge one because it's prohibitively expensive. But something I like to tell people is that, the TI-84, that's the standard today, was built in 1996. That means we went through like 4 technological revolutions since, and it hasn't been upgraded. So when thinking of like what could, forget calculator, just what could a math tool do in 2020, right? That's how we approach this. Like, how can we really build a math tool that lets teachers and students explore together? And there's a lot of other companies that have already done, tremendous work in terms of what a math tool can do. We want to unlock its power though by making it accessible on tests. Now to answer what your question, sorry, I was just looking at this text here.
Yeah, the second part was just like what's in the schools that you've rolled out and what's been the feedback you've gotten from students and teachers?
So the feedback we've gotten has been like quite tremendous, right? I don't have it on my desk anymore, but last week I had a thank you note from like a student. We went to a community college. This was a class of mainly 30 and 40-year-olds from low-income communities looking at a second shot, figuring out math, figuring out their career. We did a presentation, and then the professor in that class was like, all right, everyone in this class has the choice for this semester. Instead of buying the TI calculator, you can use ClassCalc instead. And it was like, the price point was like, so you asked before what the pricing is, right? Calculator is totally free. Lockdown is generally $12 per student per year. We generally do a good job at meeting schools at their price point. But right then and there, he said, you can opt for the solution that's 10% of the cost. And I think maybe 90% of the class decided to opt for the ClassCalc solution. So the feedback has been tremendous.
And then are are schools tying that to like registration costs, or like just like you would buy your books for the year, or is it assumed by the school itself?
Yeah, so it depends. So in K-12, generally, you're looking at a system where there's no one's really charging students for school supplies. It's generally the school paying for it. So the school will generally be purchasing some sort of contract, the school or the district, for its students. And then at the community college level, it's a little more flexible, where the school might decide to pay for it if they have the budget to do so. But if not, they'll pass it on to the students, and then maybe package it into the class's price. Because a lot of classes these days, especially in the STEM, have like a $50 lab fee or something like that. It includes all the materials and tools and whatnot.
Nice. Do you guys have a program for low-income school districts?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of hinted at it before, but we do a really good job. I mean, the cool thing about software is that it's almost infinitely scalable. Like, it's not much of a different cost to have 1,000 ClassCalc apps deployed versus 100,000 ClassCalc apps deployed, other than server costs. So when we talk to low-income districts, we make sure that they're aware of that, because it's, for us, we definitely could lower the price to meet people at a price point that makes sense for them. Priority number one is to just get the access out there.
Gotcha. How important is it to have standardized testing clearance? So whether it's state or like SAT or these different tests where they're highly regulated, because I could see like downloading the app, using it for class, but then I get to the test and I have to go and buy the calculator anyway. Where are you guys at with that, and how do you see that being received?
Yeah, totally. So it is important, I would say, to get standardized testing clearance, especially because that's a test that's super important for students getting into college and whatnot. 15 years ago, I would have told you that, there's no chance. It's a paper and pencil test. And they're just going to continue insisting that the TI calculator be the standard, be approved. But today, most of these tests have moved online, and the ones that haven't have plans to do so over the next couple of years. And when you're in the online environment, it's a stone throw away to have, our calculator embedded as sort of a plugin that you would just be able to kind of open up on the side of your screen. So that's what we're looking to as the go forward plan. But in the meantime, we're still seeing tremendous growth in the K-12 community, simply because, it's just so much easier. I mean, if you're talking a class, let's say a class is 45 minutes long and you're learning linear regressions, which is already a tough subject, teachers are going to prefer to use the calculator that, takes 2 minutes to teach you linear regressions on, and then you can spend the rest of the 43 minutes understanding the actual math, rather than a calculator that you're doing a 30-minute tutorial on figuring out the linear regressions, and then you only have 15 minutes left to teach the math.
Gotcha. And you guys are being used on some AP testing now, if I understand, right?
Yeah. So for this upcoming year, College Board had announced that digital calculators, the online calculators, are fair game. So we've made that, it is free again. So we've made that available for students that will opt to use that as an option.
Well, that's awesome. So we're gonna bring some questions in from the audience. Mark C asks, how do you get teachers on board with this? Seems like there could be pushback if they're required to use an app.
Required to use an app as in okay, so I'm going to make an assumption, and if I'm wrong, Mark, please feel free to let me know. But I'm assuming that what you're saying is it's about accessibility. Like, how can we tell students to use an app? What about the students that don't have a smartphone? So I'm going to answer that question, and then if that wasn't the question, please feel free to clarify for me. But what we tell teachers is that 100% accessibility is the goal. It's the ideal. It's what we're going for, and we do as well as we can to build accessibility features to make ClassCalc, to make the text bigger, to make it visible and whatnot, and to also make it as accessible as possible on as many devices as possible. And when we analyzed the whole calculator situation, we said, what is the most ubiquitous tool so we could get as close to 100% as possible? And the answers was smartphone and then Chromebooks, which is why we have support on both of those for now. And between the two, you're talking about 90 to 100% access on average. And so I would say while the goal is 100% access, and while we'll continue to work towards that, the current reality is that 90 to 100% access between smartphones and Chromebooks is tremendously higher than anything you're going to get with TI calculators.
Can you just, for myself and probably the viewers too, I've never seen anything but a TI calculator. So like, how much of the market do they own, and what are your other options today if you don't want to go out and buy the $150 calculator?
Yeah, so there is like the options of the past, which are the handheld calculators, and then the options of the future, which are the software calculators. In the past, it was really Texas Instrument, HP, and the Casio calculators. And Texas Instrument has like a near monopoly in the U.S. They have something like 80% of the market, or at least they had it. Their share is definitely dropping because the world is changing and they're not. And Casio and HP definitely have lion's shares of markets in Europe and other countries abroad. So those were really your terms. Like when I walked into class, was it 2007, so 13 years ago, when I was a freshman, the choices were TI and then HP and Casio. But you probably want to buy TI because that's what the teacher is going to use for her demonstrations. And then today, your options really are, there are a variety of like online calculators, but ours is the one that focuses on being safe to use on tests, so that you could really use it as a complete replacement, not some online calculator during class, but then come to test, you have to use your handheld TI.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Another question from the audience. Ali Minham says, are you looking for investors? What's their current funding status?
Yeah, so I could say we're definitely on the lookout for investors. I can, Ali, if you'd like to reach out to me, dan@classcalc.com is my email. I'm happy to share more private information with you. Yeah, we're definitely in the middle of a raise, and it's going pretty hot. We have some amazing investors on board. I don't know if I could say their names here, but if you reach out to me via email, I'm happy to share more. Great.
So Dan, tell us a little bit more about your story, how you came to this. And one of the things that we like to share with the viewers is, your not only your personal journey, but also something that you've learned from the founder experience with ClassCalc.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I originally was going to be going to medical school. That was my thing, right? So I went to UCLA. I was studying neuroscience, and I worked pretty hard to do well and get good grades. I think I worked too hard. I didn't have much of a life at UCLA, this was partially because I was a scientist. I've always been like a scientist and mathematician at heart, and I thought, well, that's what you do when you're a STEM guy. You do medicine, and partially because I'm part of a Middle Eastern Jewish family, and that's been whispered in my ear since day one. And then I graduate, and I'm applying to medical school, and I basically have a year to do this application process, and I have 30 open hours a week. And so, I started ClassCalc because I had that Eureka moment, and it had been sitting in my mind and itching in the back of my head. So I said, I'm just going to do something about this. And so I started it. And then by the time I actually had to start going to medical school, I ended up dropping because ClassCalc had been a calling. Like doing startup, doing tech, and then doing this specific project was just so alluring to me and so alluring to the team that we formed together. So that's a bit about my story.
Nice. And then what's the outlook? So obviously, school's not in session right now, but give us the next 6 months for you guys and your team.
Yeah. So, first of all, I try to remain grateful every day that we're just in such a lucky situation, like our company specifically, because, we're a small company, we're agile, we're nimble, we were able to go remote pretty quickly and, continue supporting our usership. So I'm just lucky, and that's just happenstance that I was in that position. But also, there is a tremendous gap now. I mean, as if it wasn't bad enough before, there are millions of students in this country that borrow calculators from school, right? They get their calculators from school, and they've all gone home, and now they don't have a calculator. And so, as I mentioned before, our calculator app is free. And so we've shifted our focus to, number one, making that calculator as available as possible and just like spreading the word and let teachers know it's available to them. And then number two, letting them know that they can actually use the lockdown remotely. It's a little counterintuitive because people don't think you can, but it's actually been super helpful with some of our teachers reporting even using it just to like take roll at the beginning, take attendance at the beginning of class.
Interesting. So give a piece of advice for aspiring founders. And if we could take the focus specifically to taking your idea and putting it into action. So you talked about having your Eureka moment. What was the first step you took in realizing the product that you have today?
Honestly, my first step was fumbling around for a year and not knowing what I was doing. That is really my first. I might have thought I know what I was doing, but like I was just like, I guess in retrospect, I was like data gathering, I just like, because I came from this like science background. Like I never knew a thing about business, stocks, equity, anything like that. So I spent a year just hopping on the phone with literally anyone who would hit me up to talk and just learning what I can. And I think one of the early lessons I learned that I really, really try to like pass on to like anyone that ever asks me for advice on how to get their company started is to like be adaptive and nimble enough to learn a bit of everything. And that might have been unique to my situations. I know some founders like start a company and then they have like a buddy who's an amazing engineer and they just have their buddy be the CTO. But I kind of had to do both jobs when I first, started this. And so a little marketing, a little designing, a little tech, and you're never going to be a master at anything. In fact, as soon as you raise money, your job is going to be to switch your perspective to say, I'm not good at anything. I'm going to find people that are masters at each one of these things and have them do it. But at least at first, when you're getting your company started, it helps so much just to know a little bit of everything. Because even when you finally get your first engineers on board and whatnot, just to be able to speak the lingo to them is going to give you a 10x return on your relationship and what you guys can build together. So don't be afraid to learn a little bit of everything. That's my motto.
That's great. Well, that's great advice, Dan, and I know the viewers appreciate it. One last question from the audience. We have Aaron Burlington. What did you do to build your team? How did you find your first partners?
Yeah, so I actually when I first was doing ClassCalc, again, I had no idea what I was doing, and I also, worth mentioning, I didn't have one engineer friend. Just one engineer friend would have been amazing. So first thing you do to build your team is try to sell your friends on the idea and see if they'll work with you for 15 hours a week just to get it started. Because with friends, you already have trust, they're competent, no one's trying to cheat you. And if you don't have money, maybe they'll work for equity. Again, college students, I had no money, right? But what I did to start it off, I had to get extremely scrappy, and like I had like a outsourced team across the planet build it. And I was so naive, I actually thought we could get this app built for $5,000, which I don't know if you've ever heard this thing, Mason, but a lot of entrepreneurs say, if I knew how difficult it is to do what, like build a startup, I would have never started. So it's good that I was a little idealistic. I thought it would be a lot more possible than it is at first. So it was good because once I got the ball rolling, and even though there was this kind of crappy shell of an app that we had up on the App Store that really like broke down half the time, it built enough steam that people were actually willing to jump on and join our team, at least for the start, just for equity. And so we started with that. They were just on equity. We got a real app built. We got real investors on board, started paying salaries, and here we are today.
I feel like that's all aspirational projects that once you get into them, if you knew what it would have taken to finish them, you wouldn't have.
It takes idealism, man. It takes that kind of naivete to make it happen.
I bought an old school car that's a lemon. I've got a house project that's flat. I got all kinds of projects that look good at the outset, and now we're just sitting here. We want to thank you for coming on. This was great. It was great to meet ClassCalc. could you just give a quick recap of the product and what you want the viewers to know about what's next for you and your team?
Sure, yeah. So ClassCalc is a lockdown calculator app that's safe for tests, and the idea is that because you can use it on tests and because it's software, it's a much more powerful and better result producing replacement for the TI calculator at a fraction of the cost. As future steps, if any of you guys want to chat just to learn more or want to bring it to your school, you could email me at dan@classcalc.com, or you could always just go to classcalc.com on your own. We have tons of online tutorials, support, and again, the calculator is freely available. So you could go ahead and access it from there and explore on your own time.
Awesome. This is great, Dan. Thanks for coming on, and we look forward to tracking your progress.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mason. I really appreciate it, man.
For sure.